They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I learned something on my last video that I'd never picked up on over years, like 20 years of being on and around film and photo sets and shooting my fair share of videos with overhead cameras. I even talked to some pros and they had never heard of this. And it involves this. I told you how to get the perfect overhead shot, and I was wrong. The answer was right there. Even now, it surrounds us. It touches us. The answer was staring right back at us the whole time. And obviously I don't do my research because I just watched a video from Kyle McDougall and he just flippantly threw this piece of advice out as if it was human instinct from birth. When it comes to an overhead shot, I've always referred to them as an overhead shot. I know there's different names. I've heard clients use the term flat lay, which doesn't really roll off the tongue. Sounds sort of like a derogatory British slang. Or if you want to sound really fancy, you can use the term knolling, which is named after the furniture company. Someone in the company laid out their tools in a very specific way, and it became known as knolling. But knolling is a camera position in conjunction with a specific art direction. It's too specific. I like clear descriptive terms that my film crew understands what the hell I'm talking about so they can move quickly on set. So if I say I want an overhead shot, they know where to rig the camera overhead of the thing, and they can start formulating other questions while they're already moving. So the first problem is getting your camera even roughly overhead. You can do it in so many ways. Some big ways that I've done in the past are with a jib or a crane. A crane sounds really big, but you can get small jibs that sit on the tripod you already have, maybe, and can get your camera overhead. Just make sure they're sandbagged and solid and counterweighted and safe, especially if you have somebody, a person, under the camera. Keep it safe. Sandbag it twice. Here is one of my favorite or most famous crane rigs that I've done in my career, where we needed a time-lapse sun behind a live-action real speed subject. And I said, hey, can't we just put a really big light on a crane and move it through the frame? And I'm really proud that I made it onto the Grip Rigs channel before the Rigs channel. Moving into a studio, you'll often shoot on a big heavy dolly, and you can put an offset on a dolly and rig your camera on top of that and get way over your subject. I don't even know how to use a dolly or put anything on it. The crew does it. These are for big budget things. On cheaper shoots, we set up something called a goalpost, which is essentially two big stands holding onto a piece of speed rail, which is just aluminum pipe. I have some lengths of aluminum pipe on my ceiling. You can see that in an old video. The pipe is not like a film special thing. It needs to be a certain diameter, but the speed rail I use is from old scaffolding my dad had sitting around at the farm. Cheap goalposts that you might be able to set up are with 2 C-stands, 2 super clamps or Mayfair clamps, whatever you want to call them, holding onto your goalpost. And then go from there to mount your camera. Another option for an overhead shoot would be a drone. You know, if you're outside or whatever, everyone loves a top-down drone shot. I don't shoot with drones that often, and they're not very practical indoors, so I'm just gonna leave them out of this. So some little ways to get a camera overhead. Very simply, you can just use your tripod. With tripods looking down, you always gotta keep in mind your field of view and whether you've got a leg in the shot. That's why I don't like using my tripod for top-down shots, because usually I have a hard light coming into frame, pretty sidey from the side, and I always have a stupid tripod leg shadow running right through whatever I'm trying to shoot. I have stuff mounted to the ceiling. I made these baby receiver plates. I made them, they're cheap, and I just threaded a little hole to tighten, but I don't really trust them. You can just order these, a baby receiver plate from B&H or a baby plate, and when you're mounting it to your ceiling, just make sure it goes into a joist. C-stands work in a pinch. The thing I like about C-stands is they're versatile and they can reach into weird places, but they're not really meant to hold camera, so they're bouncy If you go back to a video I did ranting about minimalism, I had to stabilize those shots. The C-stand got me really close to what I wanted to shoot, but the bounce on it was just crazy. So what I ended up doing is using a magic arm to just clamp onto my C-stand and to just rest somewhere. And then like heck, you can even use like a Cardellini clamp or Mathellini clamp, which are my favorite clamps. You can get this thing called, what is it called? A camera bracket? I think that's what it's called, a camera bracket that you can put a tripod on. So a Mathellini clamp with just a camera bracket and your camera on top of that, it's really great. Clamp it on anything in your house. You can clamp it on a tree. You can clamp it on a tree. Clamp it on a tree. Do it. Try it. The key thing with all of these is safety. It's to remember a term called righty-tighty. Just think about how things screw together. Try to make sure that the load that you're putting on any sort of rigging or mounting arm wants to tighten it more into place rather than loosen. I see a lot of people on YouTube with C-stands and they're dangerous because they put the weight on the wrong way. Righty-tighty, safety chains, sandbags. But the big issue here is that you've got your camera rigged overhead. How do you make it actually look straight down? How do you make it square, parallel, perpendicular? I don't know, just geometrically looking straight down at your subject. It really shows when it's off. Even this website that I was researching about knolling, there's a very well-known brand that they used an example of. And if you look at the shot, you can tell that the area right directly under the lens is way up here. I don't want to criticize the photographer who did this or anything, but this is stuff that I see. Quality is in the sum of the details. Just make it click. Sometimes you just don't have that little piece of information. So what I've done in the past and what I've shared on this channel is I would always use a plumb bob, what a carpenter would use to make sure a house is straight. I've used them in the past and it's like, oh, I know how to figure out what is straight down from my lens and then point the camera at that so I know I'm looking straight down. But even that's not perfect because as you turn the camera on, it doesn't pivot on the sensor, it pivots on this ball head that is on a tripod, this ball head that is, you know, off center. So it's close enough, but it's not perfect. I posted a dedicated video about doing this a while ago. I brought it up again in my last video about building a film scanning workstation. My last video did really well for me, which is great. What came along with that was a lot of comments offering a different solution. And naturally, I got very defensive and I deleted all those comments, screaming, stupid. I didn't do that. I decided in the spirit of the internet to take this free advice from honest, good-willed commenters, to stand on the backs of my subscribers and glean every last drop. No, but actually it's quite wonderful. And these comments are a wider example of all the problem solving we do on film sets, working as a team to find a solution. It was very inspiring to see the folks with way more experience than me share their wisdom. Keep it coming. It's great. Thank you. I'll take it. So back to this. So the trick is this, and it's so stupidly simple. It's just physics, but to my little tiny brain, it's magic. You simply place a mirror on the surface under your lens, and when the reflection of the lens is dead on with itself, your camera is dead overhead the surface. It's square, it's math, it's physics, it's beautiful. And I can't believe I didn't know this. And it's so exciting to learn stuff like this. And what's cool, like one other commenter said, is even if your surface isn't square, it'll make your camera and your subject perfectly square to each other, even if the floor is uneven. This is where a bubble level or a plumb bob, they can't help you. It can't account for the level of the floor. So this is by far the best way, no matter what. And you can dial in the perfect frame every time. Physics. I couldn't take physics in high school. Now this life of mine of angles and geometry and light, but it's this really cool nerdy balance of things. So now that your camera's perfectly overhead, you can sit back, relax, and do the easy part. All you have to do is simply write something that is incredibly world-changing. Ideally something that changes the complete global paradigm and dawns a new age of human enlightenment that transcends politics, religion, consciousness as we know it, thrusting humanity towards its eternal cosmic destiny. And then shoot it on your perfectly aligned, perfectly overhead, perfectly square camera setup. Easy.